Hello, everyone. My name is Anu Rao, and on behalf of the Indotronic Savani Group, I am delighted to welcome you all to this episode of Talent Views. Indotronic Savani Group is one of the largest US staffing companies with a footprint across US, Canada, UK, and India. Talent Views is a learning thought leadership series presented by us where we talk to senior procurement professionals, DEI practitioners, suppliers, and more on topics that we in the staffing supply chain are eager to know more about. Today, we are talking to David Johnson, who is the Senior Director of Global Sourcing Software Category Transformation at News Corp. Welcome, David.
Hello, Anu. How you doing? Hello, everyone out there. And
I am very well.
excellent. Good to hear. Always good to talk to you.
You too. In the interest of time, I'm going to start off right away,
Okay.
and would love to hear a little bit about you, your role in News Corp currently, and just a brief introduction about yourself before we start on the topic.
Sure. So I am currently the Senior Director of Global Sourcing at News Corp. But I've been in IT sourcing, technology sourcing, supplier relationship management, vendor management, or software asset management for 28 years. I know it's hard to believe. I don't believe it myself. I started right out of kindergarten, so it's not so bad. But yeah, all I've done is IT. I love IT and professional services. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. How do we manage the relationships with our suppliers, and how do we get the most out of our suppliers, and therefore how do our suppliers get the most out of us?
Thank you, David. Even if you didn't start right out of kindergarten, 28 years is a long time and you don't look it.
Thank you so
Honestly.
much.
So wonderful to have you here. So let's start off with just to set the field. How does a typical supplier management program look in a typical organization? What are the basic types of SRM programs out there?
So, I mean, we can start there. Let's take one step back and let's talk about how the source to pay kind of process works, right? So typically in sourcing, you've got a demand, and then you have to go out, you do either an RFP or all of this stuff before you get to a contract. That's done by sourcing. As soon as that contract is signed, that's where supplier management comes in. The supplier management function in many organizations has the responsibility for managing what happens post-contract. In many organizations, and I say this coming from everything from pharma, I'm currently in media, I've been in financial services, I've been in higher ed. So seeing that supplier management function, that's kind of where it starts in most organizations, right? As soon as a contract is signed, it goes over to supplier management people. Typically, the goal of supplier management is twofold. Number one is to make sure that the supplier is living up to the terms of their contract. And the second part is to figure out how the supplier can be more innovative and how we as a customer can get more from the supplier. Your best buddies as suppliers could be the people in the SRM vendor management organization. They're tied in very closely to management. They're tied in very closely to the key stakeholders, and they can point you in the right direction. So it's not a bad relationship to develop. A lot of people look at SRM as kind of a get more for less, which it can be in some cases, but they can open a lot of doors for you as well.
So, when you said get more for less, I guess you're meaning from the point of view of the buying organization.
Yeah.
Where
from the point of view
the
of the
SRM
customer.
team.
Yeah. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
okay.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Just to clarify, so the SRM team does not get involved during the initial sourcing phase,
Generally, no.
or do they?
Generally,
Okay,
no.
okay,
Like, I mean, in renewal situations, sometimes they're involved, but for the most part, they're not involved until the contract is
okay,
signed.
okay, okay. And do you see a difference across various industries in terms of the maturity of the SRM model?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that in industries where they are heavily regulated and there's a lot of emphasis on cybersecurity and data protection, there's a much higher focus on supplier relationship management because they do have to protect data because they are, if they're outsourcing to a third party in a managed service arrangement or something like that, um, they
Hmm.
like to keep a much tighter grip on their suppliers and the information that's being shared with those suppliers. And that's part of what the SRM function is meant to do.
So that would typically mean industry verticals like financial services and probably even life sciences, I would think.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And to some extent higher education too, but they're a little less mature, right? Because higher ed
Okay,
typically has FERPA and if they are affiliated with a medical center, HIPAA regulations. So they want to protect as much of their data as possible. And part of that, like I said, is ensuring their suppliers are staying within their SOC 2s and ISO certifications, doing audits, stuff like that.
okay, okay. That is definitely useful to know. Thanks, David. So now that we have the framework of what an SRM program looks like, typically, um, as from a supplier point of view, uh, you talked about innovative and strategic thinking. Uh, can you elaborate on that?
So typically you as the supplier, right, you're either a staffing person, right? You have a temp or someone who's sitting in accounts payable, for example. You've got someone in accounts payable who recognizes or who sits there and sees what happens on a day-to-day basis. They know that it
Mhm.
takes a long time for invoice reconciliation or the cross matching or anything like that. That's a resource that you have on the ground that's identified a problem, right? And as the sourcing person, you should be coming back to me and saying, hey, I've got this guy who sits in AP and they said that there's a really manual process around cross matching invoices. I know that there's a technology that can do this. I could bring in another person that could help you implement this technology and we can streamline it really quickly. And that's an entirely new line of business for you as the supplier. You know what my problems are. You've got people there, and they should be, you as the supplier salesperson should be probing for that type of information. Um, and then you do the same thing when you're meeting uh, uh, with your client representative, right? If hey, what are your problems? What are you struggling with right now that I can help you with? It's not necessarily about how many butts can I put in the seats. It's can I put the right butts in the right seats at the right time to make an impact. If you're
Mhm.
innovative and you're smart and you push the right buttons, I'm going to come to you when I have a need because I know that you're going to think about what I need moving forward. Those are the best suppliers.
So the most important part that I'm taking away from what you said is that take advantage of the people who are deployed on projects at client sites. Talk
Yeah.
to them, get
Yes.
information
100%.
about what is, yeah. So that way you can go back with a solution. If not a solution, it could be a suggestion. You-
Hmm.
uh, and
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
so it, have you had? Yes, I'm sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue. No, sorry.
No, I was saying, do you have can you share any example of a supplier coming up to you like that? And if it is an example you can share, would love to hear how a supplier adds value.
Yeah, so I mean, I had an outsourcing arrangement at my last place, and they managed an entire substack of my ERP system. Right, it was a very
Hmm.
niche piece that could have been taken away with another product. Um, they knew this, we knew this. They came to us and they came to me and they came to my leadership and they said, "Hey, listen, I can think of 5 ways to automate the traffic and therefore cut down on time for your month end reconciliation." And they recommended another piece of technology that was outside of their purview. It wasn't their technology that they owned, or it wasn't something they were like, this is going to be better for you. And once we did the research, we realized, yeah, it would be better. And we pivoted to that piece of software, but we kept them as the managed service provider for that piece of software as well. So they essentially
Hmm.
doubled their money by bringing in this idea, which was innovative, it was time saving, it was incredibly efficient, um, but it could have potentially taken money out of their pocket. So for me and for my leadership, it was, you're coming to me in this sense of partnership to do what's best for me, regardless of what's in it for you. And as a result, now I'm going to take care of you. Right. And then they
Hmm.
put themselves
Hmm.
in the position of a trusted advisor and not just a supplier. And that's the difference. Right. That's a huge difference.
That
That's where you want to be.
you raised such a good point, David. So what we are talking about is not just be a supplier, but evolve in such a way that you become a trusted partner.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
We are salespeople, right? And we have
Hmm.
to grow our accounts, we have to grow our relationships. But it's much easier as a trusted partner to get that growth than as a cold calling salesperson. Yes, you can put butts in seats. Yes, you can make
Hmm.
money putting butts in seats. But when I'm calling you with a problem and you're giving me a solution to the problem, you're not a salesperson. You're my advisor. You're my
Hmm.
partner more than
Hmm.
sales guy.
In fact, I would say, even from a staffing supplier point of view, some of the most successful account managers that I have seen are people who have that kind of relationship.
Exactly.
For example, over COVID, one of our marquee clients, they had a problem. They needed large number of customer service professionals. It was COVID times, everything remote, but the account manager leading that project, she had that relationship, trusted partner relationship going on with her client. So she knew about this, and she was able to pivot, and of course, as a company, the whole company infrastructure supported her, but it needed her to build that relationship of being a trusted partner and responding to the needs at that time, even though we weren't doing customer service at that point.
Yeah. One
But
of the things that
we
I've
knew that's what the client needed at that point.
one of the things that I've experienced that were really really good for me is you as my supplier have multiple customers. So there you know that there are multiple ways that people do the same thing. Bringing to me that information
Hmm.
to make my life better is part of that trusted partnership. I had a supplier come to me, same situation. I deal with SAP a lot, and SAP has a lot of niche
Hmm.
resources, and they're hard to find and they're expensive. And she came to me and she said to me, there's a resource that's on one of my other accounts. She's going to be rolling off in 6 months or so. Are you planning
Hmm.
any major projects in this realm? And I said, yeah, we do have a project, but it's probably not going to be for, it might not be in within this 6 month time frame. And she said, okay. So she built a long term plan. She found this resource.
Hmm.
We interviewed the resource. We were like, wow, she was great. But she's stuck for another 6 months. So we revised our project plan and we negotiated so that during that 6 months she'd continue to work for them, obviously. Then it was 3 months later, but we paid her for those 3 months and she rolled right onto our account, and she was integral in a major upgrade and a bunch of other projects that we never would have found the right person, without this conversation, without this thought leadership from our client rep, from our trusted partner, you know, and
Hmm.
that's free money for her. We paid a person for three
Uh-huh.
months and that's commission for her, obviously. And, we got a great resource out of it. So that's the mindset you want to have. Help me solve my problems and I'll
Mhm.
help you make more money.
I am happy to do that. So, there's a question. I know we didn't prepare for this question, but I know you'll be able to answer this. Uh, One of the things you mentioned was the SRM team gets involved only after the contracts have been signed. Now, how do I, as a supplier, start engaging with the SRM team to build that relationship? Uh, any input on that? How would you like us to, as suppliers, to approach
So, I
the
mean,
team?
the first thing you have to do is make sure there is actually an SRM team at the organization
Mhm.
level, right? A lot of places, the SRM team is a procurement guy or someone in the business who's got responsibility for managing vendor relationships. Just talk to your client partners and say, hey, do you have a supplier relationship management organization that you can connect me with? And if they do, then you start making those conversations, sit in those meetings and talk to them, figure out what their goals are for SRM for your particular category or subcategory, um, and then start working towards it. The SRM team are often asked, do you know a good supplier for this? Even before people go to procurement and sourcing, if they've developed those relationships, especially in
Mm.
IT.
Mhm.
Plenty of people would come and say, hey, I have to do an RFP. Who else can I talk to? And I could say, go
Mhm.
talk to Endotronics. They've got a presence here, or they've got great resources that I've seen there, blah, 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 blah. So if you
Mhm.
can start building those relationships with your direct client partners and then expand that out, that'll be a good way for you to start that engagement with vendor management and potentially with the rest of the organization that you may not have a relationship with.
Uh, Thank you. That is actually very, very good advice. And so, does the SRM team, like procurement, does it get divvied up along categories, or the team looks into all the categories together?
It depends on the organization. So
Mhm.
generally, the SRM team is a small subset of procurement. Like organizations like big banks like Barclays, who have 300-person um, procurement organizations, they may have a larger subset and they may break it down by category. Um, but the way that
Mhm.
that SRM typically works is you break up your supplier base into tiers, right? So there's 4 tiers, right?
Mhm.
Critical, strategic, tactical, or transactional. And then you say, okay, I'm gonna manage these vendors. Um, these guys at the top are the ones I have to pay the most attention to because my company would fail without them. These guys in the middle are very smart. There's not a lot of risk and they're very innovative. I want to stay close to them because they can help me grow. They can help me be better. And then there's kind of everybody else, right? You want to get into those top 2 tiers by being, you know,
Hmm.
innovative and smart. And then those teams of SRM people will pay more attention to you. Those are the ones they'll join your monthly operations meetings. They'll get you that heightened level of interaction with relationship reviews on an annual basis, where you might get a C-level person in the room with you. Um, but
Mhm.
we'll go back to being a trusted partner, and that's how you get to those levels, right? Some people talk about how much is spent, blah, blah, blah. You just want to be important to the organization. You don't want to be one of many. You want to be one of one.
I love that. So, critical, strategic,
Yeah.
And the third part was
Transactional,
tactical. I mean, the
tactical. Yeah.
transactional.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like you can look at um, the way that people buy things, right? I can buy a can of soda from anywhere, right? That's the
Hmm.
transactional or commoditized version of it. I can only buy a Harley Davidson from Harley Davidson, right?
Hmm.
And then I need to eat. So ShopRite is the most important vendor in my life right now, right? And that's kind of the way that you can look at it, right? You want to be one of those top two tiers, right? You want to bring
Hmm.
joy to your sourcing person or vendor management person's heart by being that innovative partner.
And we will try on each of our accounts. So that helps me get into the next question. And that is you mentioned different industries look at the SRM team differently. You have been in a lot of industry verticals. Let's start off with how the program looks in News Corp. Um, do they have a dedicated SRM team, or is it something different from that?
No, we have a dedicated SRM team, and
Hmm.
they're divvied up by subcategories. So there's IT, software, and then there's two guys that kind of do everything else. I'm not actually sure how they divvy things up, but their role is focused on managing our critical and strategic suppliers. So
Hmm.
you, software companies like Salesforce, we can't sell without that. On ensuring that there's engagement with the vendor and each of the brands and the right people in the brands, right? To ensure that we've got full a full view of all the activity and that we're getting that innovation, that we're having those meetings, um, that the suppliers are um, not being treated as just salespeople and they're allowed to be innovative and they're allowed to be trusted partners. That's something that's being fostered by the supplier management organization here. And they're new. They're less than a year old, this organization, and they're making huge, huge dividends.
Wow, wow.
Yeah. But
And
it
so,
was
given your
very
experience,
different in say pharma, right? Where you're looking
hmm
at contract manufacturers for drug parts, right? To so to speak. It's a very different level of interaction than here. You know, they were much more closely tied. So you're meeting
hmm
your supplier weekly as opposed to quarterly.
mm, got so, in your experience, have you seen a staffing or slash IT supplier uh, evolve from a transactional supplier, because many times it can be very commoditized, to a more strategic supplier? And what
Yeah.
helped them evolve, in your opinion?
So it was that very innovative thought process, right? We had a team that was internal, and they were supplemented by some external resources, and those external resources were very vocal about some of the challenges that they were facing in relating to our internal team, their internal colleagues, um, and the client rep looked at the entirety of the situation and said, if you make certain changes to the process, it'll be more effective, not just for my people who are external and not necessarily working with us, but also for your team, right?
Hmm.
That ended up leading to that entire function being outsourced to that supplier because they were recognized as an innovative thought leader. And they basically said,
Hmm.
you can do this better if you do it this way
Hmm.
internally. It wasn't a sales pitch. It
hmm
wasn't, hey, give this to me and I'll manage it for you. It was,
hmm
and this is going to be better for both of us. It'll save you time and money, blah, 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 blah. And internally, we were like, you know what? That's smart. Let them do it. You
Mm-hmm.
know? And
Mm-hmm.
then they ended up with a huge, you know, multi-$100,000 per month piece of business because of it.
Mm-hmm. Uh, so, you talk about various programs. You touched upon financial services, media, life sciences. You have been in sourcing. You are currently in sourcing. You've been in SRM. What kind of supplier makes David feel happy? Some of the qualities. If
Um,
I were to approach you and say, "Love to be a staffing supplier," so what should I say? Tell you?
so I mean, I think it's personality goes a long way. Curiosity goes a very, very long way. Don't take my first answer as the only answer. Ask deeper, probing questions
Oh,
because it may
love
not
that.
necessarily be
Mhm.
uh, that my first answer is the right answer. My first answer might be the answer to I've got a new random salesperson calling me. Ask me about me,
Mm-hmm.
qualify me, right? Understand what my motivations are, where I'm trying to go. Do I have savings targets or am I just really frustrated with the current supplier? You need to find that out.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find in a roundabout way, not are you frustrated with your current supplier? Because that sounds like a sales pitch. um, um, the people who
Huh.
sell me the best are the people who sell me on a solution to a problem that they helped me that they identified through the conversation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so what I'm hearing is you are having a timing issue on your month end. It's taking too long. I have a couple of ideas. Do you have a second for me to run them by you? And you can verify if I'm on the right track. That's awesome to me because that's
Mm-hmm.
you wanting to understand what my challenges are. And then once you understand what my challenges are, bring me solutions. That's that's the best thing. This is what I heard your problem is. This is an idea for you for how you can fix it. Right. And if it's going to cost me
Mm-hmm.
something, it'll cost me something. Bring me the project plan and the SOW for it. You know, I can give you a
Mm-hmm.
guy for $50 an hour and he'll do these things over the next 6 months. And by the end of the 6 months, this is the result that you'll have. I'll sign that right away.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that. I love that. And I just loved how you showed that how a salesperson can talk to help bring the defenses down.
Yeah,
And that is so important, not to rush the conversation. Be curious, be genuinely invested in finding a solution to the problem. So with you, David, always I find that half an hour goes by like faster than I planned.
wow, are we
And
done?
that's why when we started talking, I said that we need to at least do two parts. And I'd love to have more parts, but but we are definitely having you for the technology sourcing part, right?
Excellent. I would love to come back. I hope you
Thank you so
guys got
much.
a little something from talking to me and you know, reach out. I'm on LinkedIn.
Absolutely, I did.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I had already talked to you about it, and I still felt I walked away having learned even more. So,
I appreciate it.
I didn't expect to learn how to be that even more effective salesperson, which I think I hopefully will be. Hopefully to the joy of my boss. But thank you so much, David. A pleasure having you. And next time we're going to leave some time to make it more interactive. Um, uh,
Yes, please.
I always like the last 5 minutes to have Q&A, but I did want to address a bunch of questions with you to set the stage, right? So
Perfect.
thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. Thank you to the audience. Really enjoyed having you with us today. You can follow us on LinkedIn and other social media channels like Instagram, Facebook. We are there as Indotronics Avani Group. I'll be posting this recording and the highlights from this recording, the learnings from this piece, and hope all of you can join me again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.